Welcome to the CCFR Radio Podcast, your source for news, updates, and stories from the CCFR.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 164 of the CCFR Radio Podcast. I'm your host, 𝐿𝐼𝐞𝐫𝐿𝐻. Thanks for joining me again today on the show. We've got all the details of the CCFR annual general meeting happening in Calgary, Alberta this May 25th, including who our guest of honor / keynote speaker is. Very exciting. We're also going to talk about the Best Day Ever contest winner. We have now scheduled that shopping spree and the indoor shooting experiences as well. So we got some information about that. And a bunch of interesting things happened when Tracy Wilson and I were over at the Calgary Easter Gun Show about a week and a half ago. And some of it involved the Alberta government. So anyway, I want to share some things about that. That's pretty interesting. And of course, I will fill you in on how I got so beat up. Anyway, we'll get right into that stuff after we hear from our sponsors. A huge thank you goes out to our great friends over at the Saskatchewan Rivers chapter of Safari Club International. They do a lot of great work over there, including supporting the CCFR and the CCFR Radio Podcast. Check out all their great work at saskriverssci.com. That's saskriverssci.com. And thank you so much to our great friends over at Vortex Canada. They continue to support the CCFR podcast and the CCFR. Can't say enough about them. Check out all their great products at vortexcanada.net. That's vortexcanada.net. Vortex, the force of optics. Need a new boomstick? Bullseye North is Canada's shooting superstore and a proud supporter of the CCFR. With a wide selection of guns and top trending gear for any shooter, they have what you need. Plus, free shipping over $250, which includes ammo, or flat rate shipping of $17 under $250. Some conditions apply. Subscribe to their weekly newsletter to get first access to the hottest deals. CTOMS has been a provider of trauma care training to military and police in Canada for nearly 2 decades. Now this emergency medical training is being made available to a wider audience through CTOMS online courses. Go to ctomsacademy.com and use promo code CCFR30 to get 30% off. That's ctomsacademy.com. All right, we are back. So I guess we'll handle the most obvious thing first. How did I get so beat up? And I would love to tell you a story about how I had to intervene and fight a cougar off with just my bare hands to save a couple of children that were playing nearby, but that's not what happened. The real truth of how I got so beat up was I was making coffee. Yeah, hard to believe. But if anyone could get severely injured from making coffee, that's me. All right. I'm the king, apparently, now newly crowned. So anyway, I'll just tell you the story real quick because I've had to tell the story even when I went to the hospital. They're like, how did you do this? I'm like, I was making coffee. They're like, how? I'm like, all right. So I have pictures. So basically, here's how I make my coffee, right? I got this filter basket. I make it 1 cup at a time. I actually put a coffee filter in this thing to keep it a little cleaner. Okay, so when you have a proper size cup, you just put it on top of the cup, and you pour your boiling water in there, and it's wonderful coffee. And your coffee machine doesn't get dirty and start making your coffee taste crappy. It's clean every time because you can put that stainless steel thing in the dishwasher, right? I love it. I use that on my boat too, so you can take it on the run. So anyway, so there's this cup I like to use when I'm out of cups, but I like to use it because it's big, because I like coffee, right? And it's this Christmas cup, and here it is. And you can see the problem is that the cup is too big for the filter. It still works, and I've gotten away with it about 15 or 20 times, but as you can see, it's too big for this filter basket, and consequently, this is what could happen to it, right? So there's your little demonstration pictures. So what happened was, I centered this thing in the middle, put my coffee filter and the coffee in it. With my right hand, I was holding this thing. With my left hand, I poured in boiling water, like right to the top, right? Because, even though that's dangerous, I mean, it would be a lot more work to, pour just a little bit in each time, right? And I will be honest with you as well, because I'm honest, even when it doesn't work for me, it crossed my mind to find a cup I didn't want to use and make the coffee in there and just pour it into my big cup. It crossed my mind, but I'm like, I've gotten away with this so many times. What could go wrong? So anyway, I'm holding this thing. I fill it up and I can see that it's canting a little bit, right? It's turning a little. I'm like, huh. So I get my left hand in there and I go to straighten it. But because it's sitting right on the edge, the minute you're off that edge, there's just nothing holding it, right? So it turns over and it spills water on this wrist, right? And I'm like, and I pull my hand away and then the whole thing flips the other way and all of it goes right over top of this palm, over the back of my hand. And I'm like, ugh, and I shake it off and I'm like, that was boiling hot water right out of the kettle. Like literally 5 seconds after it boiled and I poured it in, right? So I was like, ugh. So I'm like, I step over and I stay calm. If there's anything I'm good at, it's staying calm no matter what. Like my heart rate doesn't even go up, right? Maybe when I jerk my hands away, but other than that, like I'm cool as a cucumber. I'm like, okay. I step over to the side, I turn the water on and I'm like, hold my hands under there. Cause I don't, like I have basic first aid, but I don't, like if a penetrating wound, no problem. Some kind of crushing, blunt trauma, no problem. Lacerations, I know what to do, but I couldn't remember anything about burns. I just don't know that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm like, I know I got to hold my hands under here for like 10 or 15 minutes. That I do know. Well, my hands are covered in boiling hot water, coffee now, and coffee grounds. So I'm like moving it around, right, to both stop the burning process and to get these coffee grounds off. So I guess this wrist, I gets, most of the stuff off and this wrist, I'm holding my hands so they're both getting water, right? So anyway, I'm doing this and I go to wipe the coffee grounds off my wrist and hand and my skin comes off, right? And I'm like, uh-oh. And I'm like, I don't know how to treat that. But anyway, I kept going. I'm like, okay, what's my next move? So it's funny because this is how my mind works. I'm looking at all this coffee. Here's a picture of what the kitchen looked like, right? After it happened, okay? So of course my priority is I better get a picture of this from my wife. And so I'm like, that's going to stain my counter. And that's, I don't have whatever, like 15 grand to buy another one, right? So I'm like, okay. So once I did my 10 or 15 minutes of cold water, I was like, okay. I go over and I get the coffee off there. And then as my hands were, arms were drying off, here comes the pain, right? Because burns are painful. And I'm like, okay. So I put my arms under and that stops the pain, right? It takes it right down to from a 9 to a 9 out of 10 to a 3. And I'm like, okay, and clean up a little bit. And now I'm looking at this hand and the whole thing had turned white because I'd lost, all the skin is dead, right? The epidermis layer of my skin is all dead. And there's a big, swath where the skin came off and it's all starting to turn white. It's lifting off the next layer, right? And I'm like, I don't think I can treat this by myself. I think I may have to go to the hospital, right? So I'm like, okay. So I left the rest of the mess. At least I got off the counter so it wouldn't stain the counter and then kept going. And I called an ambulance because I'm like, I don't know if I should be driving because more skin might come off. And if the pain starts hitting me, it might be a problem. If somebody was shooting at me, I would have driven, but I don't have to, right? So I call an ambulance. So I'm like, okay, here's the thing. I was making coffee, burnt my hands off. I just want to make sure that, I treat this right because I don't want to get an infection because that's your biggest danger with burns, right? Is that you either you go into shock or you get an infection. So anyway, I was like, okay, ambulance comes. I texted my wife, like, here's what happened. And here's a picture of my hand. And so she's like, I'm coming right now. But anyway, I already had the ambulance coming. So they kind of got me to the point where I wasn't going to get infected or whatever, dressed it, right? Cleaned it, dressed it a little bit. And off we go to the hospital. So when I get to the hospital, they're like, yeah, all this dead skin, that's got to come off. Because if you leave that on there, you're going to have more scarring than you're already going to have. I'm like, okay. So they had to pull the skin up and cut it off with scissors. And it was quite a little adventure. But anyway, oddly enough, I will tell you this, the pain wasn't that bad. Like the first day it hurt a fair bit. Like, it's not comfortable, but I'm not taking any painkillers. I took an extra strength Tylenol twice that first day and one Tylenol 3. And that was it. So surprised, it wasn't that as bad as I thought it would be. But you're going to get used to me with this huge scar here now as my skin starts to heal back. But anyway, here's the most important part of the story. I have enough time to heal before my bear hunt. It's not going to wreck the bear hunt. All right. Anyway, that's what happened to me. So be careful when you're making your coffee out there, folks. Okay, next thing I wanted to cover with you is my friend Nate over at the Canadian Prepper channel on YouTube. You remember Nate, he's been on the channel a couple of times. Nate and I got together last summer and made a couple of videos. Well, a series of videos. And I want to say a big thank you to the 𝐂𝐂𝐅𝐿 Gun Club, of which I'm a member, for letting us use the range for a couple hours. Really appreciate that. But what the purpose of these videos are if you maybe you're a hunter or you're a brand new firearms owner and you're like, you know what, I want to get into action shooting, let's say, and that's the term that we're going to use today is action shooting. How do I do that? Right. So if you're familiar with any kind of shooting like that, where you're taking courses from ex-military or law enforcement or whatever, this context of shooting, that's my background. But if you're going to do that kind of stuff, you can't just show up there as a new gun owner, right? That's just not the kind of stuff that you show up inexperienced for. So how do you get from zero to mediocre, at least, but safe enough to be on the line? How do you get that instruction without paying somebody to do it? And I used to do a lot of that in the old days, in my firearms training days. And I'm like, Nate says, you need to do a series of videos. And I said, well, I don't want to do it. So if you want to do it, then I'll do it with you, kind of thing. So if you want to check them out, I think there's 3 out now. Now, here's the problem is they're not labeled like Nate and Rod lesson 1. They're a little hard to find, but here are some screen caps of what a couple of them, I think there's 3 out right now, what they look like. So anyway, go check them out. There's some important concepts about that kind of, we'll say, combat style training that you're going to use, right? And there's some important stuff there. And I don't think there's anything secret. If you're experienced in that kind of training or that kind of shooting, or you have experience in the military or law enforcement, you're not going to see anything probably that you haven't seen before, other than maybe my way of explaining it, which might be a little bit different. But anyway, they're there if you want to check them out. So thanks to Nate over at Canadian Prepper for producing those. They're really nice, and I think there's more coming as well. Okay, last thing I want to cover with you before we bring Tracy on, our great friend Donovan Duis over at Canadian Access to Firearms, the newspaper there, the classified ad newspaper for gun folks, CATF. Donovan, as I mentioned in the last episode, donated an all-Canadian build rifle, which I think we called the Great Canadian Rifle, I believe, and we're having a contest that you get free entries into for donating to the CCFR. That was a precision rifle that was all put together with donated parts from either Canadian manufacturers or Canadian distributors. So that list of people that contributed to that rifle, sorry, my hand's not working so great here, is Vortex, our great friends over at Vortex, Trigger Tech, MDT Chassis, JC Custom Barrels, Pristine Actions. It was assembled and tested by Rusty Wood Trading Company, Peter over at Rusty Wood Gunsmithing, basically. And it was test fired over at Mission Rod and Gun Club by our great friends there in Mission, British Columbia. So all Canadian rifle, precision rifle build. You can enter to win that. You get free entries for donating $10 to the CCFR. You get 1 free entry into the contest. Donate $25, you get 3 free entries into the contest. And it comes with a bunch of other stuff too. As you can see in the picture on the website, just go to ccfr.ca or firearmrights.ca. Click in the upper right where it says contest, and you can enter that. So again, another fundraiser specifically to help us raise money for some of the projects that we've been working on under the cover of darkness right now. So we got some interesting things that we're working on, and we will come out with that stuff and fill you in as soon as we possibly can. All right. That's all I had to cover with you. Let's get Tracy on the Skype. All right. Via Skype, we've got Tracy Wilson of the CCFR. Wilson!
𝐿𝐶𝐻, how's it going?
It's going all right. How about you?
I'm doing okay. What is going on with your hands there, Edward Scissorhands?
Yeah. I think everybody already knows. We talked about it, and so there you go.
Okay, so just moving on.
Yeah, we'll just move on from that.
Okay.
Be careful, kids, when you're making coffee. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, it's very dangerous.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. That stuff never happens at the range, just so you know.
No, and you know what? I've been hit in the face with spall, right? Bullet fragments or jacketing or whatever, but I've never been hurt with a firearm.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe we should, never mind.
Less coffee.
Should the government?
Less coffee, less burns. That's my new. Yeah.
That's the new motto. Think of the children.
Think of the kids, all the kids that are making coffee by themselves, getting burned like I've been burned,
Oh boy, we're going off the rails. Get on track here.
All right. So we have a lot to cover, so we'll get right at it. So the first thing, finally, the big news about the CCFR annual general meeting. Why don't you take it from here?
Okay. So this is actually a really big deal, and it's been very difficult to keep it under wraps. But the CCFR AGM, we're trying something different again this year. We keep changing it up. This year will be held on May 25th in Calgary, Alberta, beautiful Calgary, at the Sheraton Cavalier, Calgary. It's a great hotel. That's where we've been before in the past, but we're going to have a little bit of a different format this year. We're going to try, the dinner will be like a fundraiser. So it'll be an auction. We'll have silent auction, live auction. You'll be able to buy tickets to put them in buckets for prizes, and we'll draw. And most exciting of all, our keynote speaker and our very special guest joining us is Mr. 𝐿𝐿 himself, Canada's greatest hunting legend. So there's a lot going on. Everything you need to know about the AGM can be found at ccfragm.ca. Tickets will go for sale live on Friday at noon Eastern time. So watch for those. They are limited. It's a first come, first serve type of situation. And yeah, it's going to be a great time. So I'm really looking forward to getting back out to beautiful Calgary, seeing 𝐿𝐿 and just raising some money for the CCFR.
Yeah. So as you said, it is a fundraiser this time. So it's a little bit more expensive because we are raising funds. We have some big projects that we're working on, and we have to fund them. That's just kind of how it works. So we have regular admission tickets for $175, and that includes just a tremendous buffet. Like, it's the best buffet that they had available.
Oh, yeah. So the menu is on ccfragm.ca.
Yeah,
you should go and peruse that.
Yeah, check it out because it's pretty impressive, like really impressive. And then you have the bidder circle, which is up front towards Jim. I think those tickets are $225, and they come with a copy of Jim's book, and he will sign them for you too, of Call Me Hunter, I believe is the name, right?
Yeah, I've got it here. It's a great book. So, yeah.
Excellent. And how that's going to work is those tickets will go on sale. A live link will show up on ccfragm.ca. That link will show up at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific this Friday, which is April the 12th. Okay, so if you want to get in there, I think tickets are going to go really quick. And so
I think so too.
Yeah.
And for those people who live far away or maybe can't make it or don't end up getting a ticket, there's still going to be an opportunity to participate in the auction. If you follow that link, ccfragm.ca, a little closer to the event itself, there'll be a spot there where you can register to participate in the auction. You can bid on things online. So that live auction will also go online, which will be really cool because then you can play wherever you are, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a bit of a mad rush. The hotel where we are was a little bit small for this kind of event, but we had already booked, and they're helping us out every way they can. But tickets will go really quick. So if you're really interested in going, you got to be there at the site at noon Eastern time this Friday. So I guess by the time most people are watching it, it's like tomorrow, if you're watching on Thursday when the podcast comes out. You got to go right there, follow the link, buy your tickets as soon as possible.
Awesome.
All right, we'll move on to the next thing. So we contacted the winner of our Best Day Ever contest, right? Our good friend Jeremy Johnson from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. And
really nice guy.
We've scheduled our shopping sprees and indoor shooting events.
Yeah, this is really, really fun. I'm excited to go. Tuesday, April 30th, we'll be heading to beautiful Calgary, Alberta once again, where we're going to meet up with Jeremy. We're going to take him literally on the best day ever. We're going to pick him up early in the morning, 9:30. We're going to head for Calgary Shooting Center. We're going to he's got $5,000 to spend on whatever he wants. I think he's got his eye on some very particular rifles. And then we'll do some shooting. We will be shooting full auto, so that's kind of fun. A little bit of a different experience. And then once we're done there, we're going to head over to the Shooting Edge, visit our buddy J.R. Cox. We're going to have lunch there. We're going to take Jeremy shopping on another $5,000 shopping spree. We're going to shoot some more guns. I'm going to challenge both of you to a throwing axe competition and just spend the whole afternoon there having a great time, and then head out for dinner later that night, feast on some steak, and kind of debrief on what he thought on how the day went. And then he's going to get to take all that sweet stuff he just bought back home to Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, and have a great time.
Yeah, well, Jeremy decided because he was close enough to drive that he was going to drive his car, so he doesn't have to wait for us to ship everything to his home.
Yeah.
He gets to take it with him right there. So pretty cool.
Yeah, really cool. So watch for some video and clips and some posts about that. I've got some tricks up my sleeve, and I think it'll just be a great day. I really want it to be his best day ever. So looking forward to it.
So two things. Number one, we will show some video and some pictures or whatever. There's a podcast the following week, so I'll make sure that I include some of that stuff. We'll talk about it and show a little video diary of what we did. And the other thing is one more shout out to our great friends over at the Calgary Shooting Center and over at the Shooting Edge for helping us run this contest and just really making it a lot easier than it might have been for us to run a contest like this and to offer these big prizes. So thanks to both of those CCFR business members for their help.
Yeah, they really are making dreams come true that day. That's for sure.
Well, you know what? Speaking of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, yet another business, legitimate, federally licensed, well, I guess provincially licensed firearm business, the Gun Hub in Moose Jaw just shut down thanks again to the absolute assault from the federal government against exclusively licensed gun owners. We've lost now another range and gun store.
Yeah, and this comes after, a string of recent business shutting down, and these are, for the most part, small family businesses. They've been in their community for a long time. They're supporting customers in their area. And, it's just like another casualty of the war on gun owners by this government. While at the same time, violent crime is raging out of control. Canada's never been more violent. Criminals are, more or less operating unabated. It's just a really weird situation that we're in. And I feel horrible to see another longtime business just go under thanks to the Liberals' policies. It's tragic.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they're very proud of themselves over there in Ottawa, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I bet.
Yeah. So anyway, whatever. All right. Now, you and I, was it last week or the week before? It's been, a lot's been going on for me in the last few days. So.
Yeah, you've been doing some funny stuff over there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm doing things that unprecedented stuff, right?
Yeah. Never been done before.
Never been done before. No one has ever had to go to the hospital for making coffee. But anyway, we were over at the Calgary Easter Gun Show. Yes. And we have a few things to chat about real quick about this. So now, the people that held that gun show, they have a very long name. What is it again?
It's the Alberta Arms and Cartridge Collectors Association, the AACCA.
Yeah.
Really great guys. And if you have a love of the history and, kind of the rich culture around firearms, these guys are the guys for you, because there was stuff there that I've never seen in my life. It was really cool.
And they are they're so into it. Like,
oh, yeah.
Like, it's funny because I was looking at these guys. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but I was looking at these guys and listening to, it was Jeff Collins. He made a speech at the end, but I was listening to a speech and they were talking about all the booths. They gave out awards for the best booths and talking about the history and, oh, this gun was, came out in this, 18, what have you. They only made 36 of them and they fired this, very specific cartridge, which was only used from this time to that. I'm like, man, there's so much knowledge in that community.
Oh, yeah.
And, everyone is older than I am, if you can believe it. And I'm like, man, the next generation, it's very rare to see them carrying on that tradition and carrying that knowledge forward. And I was just like, man, we're going to lose a bunch of this stuff. So anyway, it was really great to be at that show and to see all this stuff and at least have some appreciation for how much effort people put into preserving the history and especially a bunch of Canadian history there that I have no idea about any of that stuff. So really interesting.
Yeah. And this is like a true, traditional gun show. It's not a big trade show with, boats and ATVs. Like, it's not about that. It's literally about, the history and culture of guns. And, there's some buy and sell going on there and just artifacts and all kinds of cool stuff. And it was a real treat to be there. Of course, we had a huge team of volunteers there, which was fantastic. We had representation from 4 different provinces: BC, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Ontario. So that kind of speaks to the, kind of the importance of that event, is knowing that we've got volunteers that are kind of traveling to be at it. So huge shout out to our Alberta team. Like, they just knock it out of the park every single time. Just amazing, amazing commitment.
Yeah, absolutely. And we couldn't do these kinds of events without them.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm flying in there, you're flying in there, and there's no way that we could hold an event like that without our volunteers. So thank you very much, everyone that was there. Really, really appreciate your help. Can't say it enough. All right. So while we were there, we met up with the CFO of Alberta, Dr. Bryant. And
yes, it's always nice to see our good friend, Dr. Terry Bryant, and have a great conversation about all the wonderful things that province is doing for their citizens. Justice Minister 𝐂𝐿𝐻 was also there with his staff. So that was really, really nice to see. I hope I don't butcher this, Majumdar. He's the new MP. He's a rookie MP, and he's from Calgary Heritage. Really nice, sharp, young guy. I know that I saw a post today on Twitter about him saying he's kind of one of these new sharp guys to watch, right? So just really neat to see the support come out for that. And nice to run into everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, Shuv was a interesting guy too. Really, really articulate, really quick.
Yeah.
So if you, I haven't looked him up on the internet because that's the first time I had heard of him or I had met him, but it was a real pleasure. And we had a really, really interesting talk about the
like a really smart
about the Canadian political
guy.
Landscape. Yeah, it was very, very interesting.
We also drew a really cool prize. So sometimes at these gun shows, whether we're we've got a rifle or just some other sort of items on the table, we sort of raffle that off, right? So we had a draw prize there this year. We brought a picture of one of our neon signs. You'll remember from the best day ever and the contest before, we've got those great big, huge, like 3-foot wide, signs. I think one of them says firearm rights are human rights, and the other one says these guns are not for sale. So we did really well off of that. Thank you for everyone who came out and supported that. But what's really cool is 𝐿𝐻𝐿 won that. And for those of you who don't know, 𝐿𝐻𝐿 owns Marway Militia in Winnipeg. That's right. They had a booth there, and they traveled all the way from Winnipeg to set up at the Calgary Easter Gun Show. Longtime supporters of the CCFR. Fun story about them during the Integrity Tour when we were driving in that giant Liberal failure bus. I was heading through Manitoba on my way to see Ralph Goodale in Saskatchewan, and we hit that massive snowstorm, and we were not equipped for, winter weather. It was only early October. So we stopped at Marway Militia in Winnipeg, and she outfitted us with beautiful pure wool Ranger blankets that kept us warm all the way there. So big shout out to Marway Militia and great supporters of the CCFR. So she actually won the one that said these guns are not for sale. And I thought that might be a little weird in a gun store to have a sign that says these guns are not for sale, because her guns are literally for sale. So I actually called her up and I said, you know what? Did you want to swap it out for firearm rights or human rights? And she did. So that got shipped out to her this week. I can't wait to see it in the store. If you're in the area, make sure you go in and check it out. But yeah, just another fun thing that happened in Calgary.
So we still have one that's these guns are not for sale.
That's right. We'll have to figure out what to do with it.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. And also a big thank you to the organizers of the Calgary Easter Gun Show for providing us with a $5,000 donation while we were there.
Yeah, they did that last year as well, just these big helpful donations. And I always say we can't do big things without big help. So, just really good supporters of the CCFR, and they gave us the best spot for a booth ever and a great big donation. And they're just wonderful, wonderful people.
Yeah, but during the show, we met with a lot of people, and it was just great to see everybody. And even though it's a little grueling, we've been on a pretty grueling travel schedule. I was able to not travel this week because of this. So I wiggled out of that one and was able to reuse my flights for something else. But
Well, God bless Alberta because they're just so good to their gun owners.
They
right?
are. They are.
Yeah.
Everyone is really pulling together there. It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think no.
What about Danielle Smith?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Minister 𝐂𝐿𝐴𝐻, who we met, and of course, the CFO of Alberta, Dr. Terry Bryant was there. But, we had this big talk about what the province is doing to basically tell the federal government, whatever your political problems or your political machinations are, those belong to you. You can't unreasonably affect our citizens, like take their private property away for no good reason. And so we're not going to help you do any of these things. In fact, if you're going to do them, we're going to put a lot of requirements on you so that you'll do it right and you'll do it by the law. And of course, those requirements can sometimes become too onerous to facilitate any of that seizure of private property. We're kind of tiptoeing around that a little bit. But Danielle Smith actually had something to say about the federal government's ability to continue to spend borrowed money and collect no firearms. Anyway, check it out.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government has splurged $42 million on its firearm buyback program without confiscating a single firearm to date. Should the federal government try again to implement the program, would your government consider invoking the Sovereignty Act in a bid to protect the property rights of law-abiding Albertans?
Well, I call that a success that they haven't been able to seize a single law-abiding firearms owner's gun. So I wish them continued success at being able to achieve zero compliance with their program. And we are not going to do anything to help them. We believe that the issue is the illegal firearms getting into the hands of gangs and organized crime coming across the border. And the federal government should be focused on that, not focusing on taking guns away from sport shooters, duck hunters, and farmers.
Oh, that's a little spicy. We wish you continued success at doing absolutely nothing right.
Yeah. Well, I have the same sentiment for the federal government as well.
Me too.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's
God
great
bless
when
Alberta.
provincial governments, like I think as an individual, you start to feel small when you have something as big and well-resourced as the federal government of a G7 nation bearing down on you for just purely political reasons, for them to help themselves stay in power. And you feel so small like that, right? But then, you have a provincial government that steps up and says, you know what, you're going to have to go through us first. And I mean, it's almost like that. You almost feel like a kid that's being bullied and then your big brother shows up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And this, that's a couple of provinces now that are stacking up behind each other and in front of gun owners. And it's nice to see. I mean, at the end of the day, I would think that most reasonable Canadians want the same thing. And that's a focus on reducing crime, violence, and gun smuggling, not a focus on reducing gun ownership. So,
it seems so simple to us.
It does.
All right. Well, we got to the end of our list for this episode. Thanks for the update, and I guess we'll see you in the next one.
Okay, we'll see you then.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 163 of the CCFR Radio Podcast. Thanks, everyone, for joining me. If you can, please share the podcast. Get your friends, get your family, get people you know, get your gun club. Get everyone involved in the fight to maintain their own ability to own and use firearms legally. Really important. The Liberals have taken it to us every chance they've gotten for the last 8 years. We've never seen anything like it. And of course, aided and abetted by the NDP. They're in on it too. And the Bloc Québécois will kick us while we're down every chance they get, of course, right? And don't forget the couple of Greens in the corner throwing stuff at us too, right? So anyway, we got to keep fighting these people, and that fight is not going to end until we have our stuff back and firearm regulations in Canada make sense and actually do something to contribute to public safety. That's the goal here. Right? So anyway, all right, before I let you go real quick, Canadian Prepper, go to their YouTube channel, check out those videos if you're so inclined, the videos that Nate and I made. He did 90% of the work. I just showed up for a range day basically and yapped a bunch. So if you're so inclined, check those out. Donovan, do us over at CATF. Thank you, Donovan, for donating the rifle and the rest of the gear for the Great Canadian Rifle Contest. You can go to CCFR.ca, click contest, and you can enter that. Not expensive to enter, and it really helps us. And thanks to everyone who came together, all those Canadian manufacturers and a Canadian distributor to make all that stuff happen. And our friends over at Mission Rod and Gun Club, of course. AGM tickets, CCFRAGM.ca, CCFRAGM.ca. Go there. If there's tickets left, grab them. Especially, they're going to go quick, right? Because our TV show comes out in a week. And if there's any tickets left a week from now, they'll be gone when the TV show comes out. So make sure you get them if you're interested in going. And for the love of God, if you're making coffee, be careful. All right? Be careful making that coffee, because I can tell you from experience, it can be very hazardous. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. We'll see you in the next one.
This is another episode of the CCFR Radio Podcast. Remember, if you don't stand up for your own ability to own and use firearms, who will? Join the CCFR or donate right now at www.firearmrights.ca.